that they're trying to achieve. Hey, if you're just joining us, come on in. We just ask that you put your name in the chat so we can all get to know you and share your social media or LinkedIn handle. And also share with us anything in the chat that you want us to know about you. You're welcome. Feel free to eat, enjoy your lunch, multitask, and participate as we go along. We're ready to go. Just keep it moving. Today, I'm going to share an introduction of the PCL method, right? And how you can assess the developmental stages of your staff members, okay? This is only going to be a snapshot. Obviously, it's a lunch and earn. I know we got to get back to the rest of our day. So there are three components to the PCL method that I've used as a leader and also used with workforce organizations, businesses, and organizations to develop their staffs. The P is for the participator. The participator is that person in the organization that's very reliable, right? That participator is also someone who is really not interested in growing or achieving or elevating in the organization or the job. They're not interested too much in titles, but they're going to be very reliable. You're going to be able to count on them to do their job day in and day out. They also will be able to share some experiences, but they'll only share if they're asked, right? They're actually just going to be able to star in their role and being able to do their job. And that's just a brief description of the participator. The contributor, as you see there, Miss Kathy, we're going to talk in depth about Kathy, but just a brief description of Kathy. She is a contributor. She has some innovative ideas, and you'll kind of find out about Kathy today and have you thinking about maybe putting yourself in her shoes. The next category, the L, is for a lifer. Now, this lifer is very intrinsically motivated. Okay, this lifer wants to sit in the leader seat, has ambitions of growing to the top, and does all the things that needs to be done in order to excel and elevate in their career. That life is the person, not only do they put in the time, right, but they also add as much value as they can to the organization. That lifer is someone who you delegate a lot of things to. That lifer is someone who you can go in and talk to and exchange ideas about how being able to grow the company, how to best serve customers. But that life is very committed to not only growing and adding value, but growing themselves. Okay. So that's what I call the PCL method. And leaders can use the PCL method to assess the developmental stages of their staff members. Well, how did I come up with the PCL method? As I mentioned, I was a head football coach, right? And I'll just share with you briefly. There were, and I want you guys to think back to when you were in high school, right? Or even when you were in college, if you were an athlete or joining an organization. There was always a lot of some people who they were fine with just being able to participate in the organization, in the athletic realm, and winning and losing really didn't affect them as much as you thought it would. They were okay with playing or not playing. They just wanted to hang out with the guys, right? So I want you to kind of keep that in mind as you think about those three categories. Let's talk about Kathy, though, the contributor. Now, Kathy is one person that she's always going to bring innovative ideas. Kathy is very content about being in her role, but at the same time, Kathy does want to add as much value as she can to the organization. And I'll paint the picture even further for you for some personal things about Kathy. Now, Kathy is the only child, okay? But her parents taught her that Kathy is not always about you. So in her family with just her and her two parents, she learned the importance of being able to contribute because she had to, contribute to the different things within the household and the different things in the family dynamic. And that helped Kathy to ascend whenever she was in high school, college, and now into her career. But Kathy also is someone who she doesn't really have those natural leadership values. See, Kathy is someone who she didn't have to bring her little siblings to the bus stop or take care of them. See, Kathy didn't have to take care and cook dinner after school and make sure things were right because her parents were trying to put food on the table and working late hours. So Kathy just didn't learn those natural leadership skills. And at her job right now and in the organization that Kathy's working for, she's a top performer. However, Kathy's kind of feeling a little burnt out because her leaders are trying to get her to excel to a leadership position. But Kathy's pretty fine with just bringing ideas, exchanging and contributing information, contributing more ways to add value. But she's kind of afraid of going into that leadership stage because she thinks that it's going to take away from her overall identity. But Kathy's being pushed by the leaders because she's the top sales performer. I mean, she's drawing out the charts and bringing in customers and doing the things that they need to do. But there's a difference that we'll find out between being a top performer and being able to be a leader. So I'm quite sure that you've come across a Kathy in your day. And a question that I have for you, and this is a time that we can move away from the chat or unmute your mic if you can. Can anybody relate to Kathy, or does anyone know of a Kathy in their organization?
Yeah, I'll chat in on this. Yeah, I think so. And maybe I'm extending of what you're kind of referring to of this is that as a leader myself, not viewing those employees as just cogs in the wheel type of thing. It's understanding they're human beings and finding the Cathys in your example and knowing, well, what does motivate them. And so I've had those of once you kind of catch on that piece, it's not that Kathy's not motivated. She's just not motivated by what you think people should be motivated by. So as a leader, you try to find what type of person they are so you can motivate them to achieve the level that they are able to achieve. Going back to the coaching standpoint, that's all you're trying to do is maximize themselves within your organization.
Exactly. Thank you, Coach Troy, for sharing that. And to take it even the next step further, you mentioned something about finding out what does Kathy want to ascend to? Because right now, at this point, she may be very comfortable in the role as a contributor. Now, that doesn't mean that she doesn't want to become a lifer, or that doesn't mean that she doesn't want to become a leader at another time. But right now, us as the leaders being able to understand the developmental stage of where people are, but the questions are, where do you really want to go? Right? Because we all know that it's going to be better for us to keep Kathy on our team versus trying to replace her and allowing her to be able to develop and grow versus Kathy feeling like she's being pressured. And now she goes and she becomes a superstar at another organization or on another team. And now it's costing us money. It's costing us time to onboard people. It's a big gap in the culture building that we're doing to have to replace Kathy and retain her. Right? So thank you, Coach Troy, for sharing that. Well, another question I have is, how do we make Kathy feel valued? Anybody want to share with that? How do we make Kathy feel valued?
I think one of the biggest things that you have to do when you're trying to find what values her, you have to find out what she wants. What does she likes? What motivates her? In order for you to get to that place. If you don't know what she wants, what she likes, it's gonna be very difficult to do that. So I think you have to know your personnel.
Outstanding. Thank you, Coach Trayton. And I believe you also typed in the chat that you're a leader of a high school. You're a high school head coach, correct?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Coach Trayton and I go back to John Everett High School. But Coach, thank you for sharing. And yes, you're correct. I agree with that also. Just being able to find out who those humans are, right? Because sometimes I think that we kind of get caught up in the outcomes and we forget that they're human just like us. And being able to build that rapport with other humans in a professional manner to find out exactly what they want, that gives you an opportunity to be less frustrated with their development. I think we have some responses in the chat also. Karen, can you share with us what was shared in the chat?
Yes. Maisha said that I believe I am a Kathy. I can contribute, but I'm unsure of where I want to go. My supervisor has been continuously coaching me by putting me in positions to lead in different areas. To help a Kathy feel valued is understanding their strengths. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes, Maisha. Outstanding. Outstanding. And I think where you can show some leadership is, if you have not done so already, just starting to initiate that conversation with your leader and letting them know, hey, here's what I kind of forecast. I definitely appreciate your help and your guidance of where you're trying to get me to go. But maybe you can ask, hey, what's the timeline like for where we're trying to go? Because I want to continue to add that value to this company and this organization. Were there any more comments in the chat?
No, just a well said for Troy earlier when he was speaking.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Well, thank you. We can go on and we're ready to go. As I mentioned, we were going to learn about the three categories: the participator, the contributor, and the lifer. And that's how we can assess the development of our staff members. Now, we want to use the trust and talent grid to keep our people around, right? So that they don't leave. Well, here's something I want to briefly describe to you. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time on this lunch and earn to go through the entire trust and talent grid. But I used this in multiple ways when I was a leader of a football team, a high school football team. And basically, it taught accountability amongst each other, right? And it also built trust. But it also created self-assessment. And here's what I mean by that. So as a leader, right, obviously, most times we're looking for those high talented, high trust individuals, those superstars, because they're reliable, right? Their skill level is high. And as Coach Troy mentioned about the culture, sometimes and most times they're builders of our culture, those superstar, high trust, high talent, right? And the way that we read this grid is on our horizontal axis down there, those numbers increase toward high talent, and those numbers on the vertical axis increase with our trust. But we all know that within an organization, we have multiple types of people. So my question is, where do you guys think we would place Kathy based off the description of her? Where would we place Kathy on this grid? Would she be a role player? Would she be closer to being a liability? Would she be close to being a superstar? Would she be close to being a wild card? You can type in the chat for me based off the categories that you see there, the titles. Where do you think we would place Kathy? Role player. Thank you, Bonnie. Mm. She could be a wild card or a superstar in that mix. All right. Good. Okay. Somewhere in between that role player and superstar. Well, thank you all for adding those descriptions, and we value your opinions, right? And your feedback. So just imagine, Maisha, right? What if you handed this grid to your leader and asked them where would they place you? What if you were in between that role player and that superstar? And just think about how much you could grow over time. Because if you look at it, you're considered high trust, right? So if you're high trust, that means that you're loyal, you're dependable, you're definitely contributing to the organization. And as you lean over and over toward that superstar status, now your contributions are coming from your talents. They're coming from not only just your skill set, but how you've been able to pull and grow other people or grow different dynamics in your organization also.